The guy rage quit because I bodied him so hard, I bet he's salty AF. What does that even mean? What has that got to do with gaming? I don't understand these words. Alright mate, how's it going today? I'm not too bad. Thanks for asking. Welcome to another episode of the DanSenSei English podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm here to help you stop being an English student and start being an English speaker. Today's podcast episode is all about gaming, and it was requested by the newest member of the Patreon study squad. Kazuo requested a podcast all about gaming, so here we are. If you join the Patreon study squad, you can also request episode ideas and I'll record them for you. So what are you waiting for? The link is in the description. We'll talk more about it later in this podcast. Now, if you're new here, the point of this podcast is to give you some listening practice, listening to a native speaker speak naturally. It's not edited, it's just a natural me as a native speaker talking. That's why you're going to hear a lot of weird stuff. You'll hear a lot of these things, because it's natural, and it'll give you a good idea of how native speakers actually speak. It'll help you improve your listening skills, and hopefully you'll learn some stuff along the way, and you might even be entertained for a bit. So that's the point of this podcast. Each episode's about 30 minutes long. You don't have to listen to it all in one go, or watch. I'm on YouTube making video versions now as well. So yeah, just throughout the week, give it a listen. And if you've got any questions, of course, you know where to find me. But that's the point of this podcast. Right then, let's get straight into the first topic, shall we? Today I've got three main topics to talk to you about. The first is a bit of gamer vocabulary. Some words that gamers say. And this can be like describing the actual machines, it can be describing the kind of games, and that kind of thing. We're also going to talk a little bit about gamer slang that gamers use when they talk to each other and what it means. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experiences with gaming and games I like and that kind of stuff, so you can hear me naturally talk about it like I would to another native speaker. Sounds good? Let's get started. The first thing I've got for you today is some gaming terminology. And I've actually got some props for you today. Now, if you are listening to the audio-only version, I'll do my best to explain what's going on. But if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to actually show you the things that I'm talking about, so it's easier for you to understand. The first thing I want to talk about is the actual machine that we use to play games. Now, I'm holding one in my hand. Maybe you guys recognize this from your younger days. And this machine is called a gaming console. The machine that plays the games we call a gaming console. This one is a Super Nintendo, or a Super Famicom if you're in Japan. Modern examples, Xbox, PlayStation, that kind of thing. They're all called games consoles, and that's what we use to play games. Cool. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need a way to control the game, right? Like, you don't just look at it and it does something. So you're going to need something like this. If you're listening, I'm holding a little piece of plastic with some buttons that maybe you can hear, and a directional pad so I can move the character around with my hands. I use my hands to press the buttons and things happen in the game. Now, this thing is called a controller. Of course, it controls the game. We call it a controller. Some people call it a joypad or a pad. They all mean the same thing. It's just a way to control the game. Nowadays, especially, some people don't play games on consoles. They play on PC. And PC players sometimes use a keyboard and mouse to control the game rather than a pad. But, you've got some way of controlling the game. It's still, I guess, called a controller. There you go. The next thing you're going to need is an actual game. Now, there's two kinds of games. You get the physical release, which is, the actual physical thing you can touch. Or you get digital releases where you download the game from the internet and you don't have to do anything, right? When we're talking about physical releases, we get things like this. Now, if you're listening, I'm holding a small rectangular piece of plastic with a, some kind of motherboard or something inside. What do you call that? Some plastic circuit board inside with some data on it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm holding. This contains all the data for the game. And this specific game is Street Fighter 2, by the way. There you go. And we call this a cartridge. This plastic thing with the plastic circuit board inside is called a cartridge. Even if it's a smaller one like this for Game Boy, it's still a cartridge. Or even the little ones that come with Nintendo Switch games nowadays, they're all called cartridges. It's different for like PlayStation and Xbox. They tend to use games on a disc, a game disc. But yeah, the physical plastic things we usually call a cartridge. Good stuff. So that is the terminology you kind of need to talk about the physical things. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is games. There's loads of different kind of games that people like. Just like movies, right? Films, there's loads of different kinds of movies, different genres of movies. Horror movies, action movies, comedy movies, whatever. Gaming is kind of the same. So some people like different kinds of games. I'm going to go through some really common ones and what they kind of mean and give you some examples of games from that genre. Now, I won't go through everything, but the more common ones I'll go through for you. The first kind of game I want to talk about is a sandbox game, right? Sandbox is, when you were young and you went to the playground and there's the little area that's got sand in it, right? And when you go there, you can do whatever you want in that sand. You can build a sandcastle, you can throw sand at your friend, you can eat it if you want, I don't know, whatever you want. And a sandbox game kind of has that idea. A sandbox game doesn't really have a set goal or a set task that you need to do. You can kind of just do what you want. The best example I can give you of this is Minecraft. Minecraft, you can do whatever you want. That's why it's called a sandbox game. And Minecraft is probably the most popular game of all time. Probably. I don't know. Never really played it myself, but it's super popular. Another kind of game is like strategy games. Now, this can be what we call RTS, real-time strategy. Basically, imagine a game of chess, right? Chess, the white piece moves, then the black piece moves, then the white piece moves, and we take it in turns. Now, imagine chess if both people moved the pieces in real time. It wasn't my turn, your turn, we just both did whatever we wanted all the time. That's kind of the idea for a real-time strategy game. We build an army and we fight each other in real time, not turn-based. For example, Warcraft, Starcraft, Command and Conquer, these kind of games. That's one variety. Another variety is called a MOBA, M-O-B-A. It stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. And it's like an RTS game, but you just control one character rather than the full army, right? And usually this is a team game, so I'll have a character and the other people on my team have a different character and we work together to win the game. For example, League of Legends is really popular, or Dota 2, things like that. Really popular games. Very popular in esports. Esports is what we call professional gaming, by the way. So esports, really popular, MOBA games, things like that, especially League of Legends. Another kind of game that's really popular these days are shooting games, often called FPS, which stands for First Person Shooter. Now, old school gamers like me will know GoldenEye on N64. That was a first person shooter. These days, I guess, games like Fortnite or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds or even, Apex Legends and stuff like that comes under shooting games. Really popular. The idea is pretty obvious. You just shoot people. Like, I guess, Halo, Gears of War, Doom, all that kind of stuff. What other kind of games are really popular? Simulation games. This is where the game tries to copy something in the real world. The best ones I can give you are like sports games, right? FIFA. FIFA is a game that is basically a football simulator. It tries to be as realistic as possible, and you play football, and it copies the real world. Basketball games, American football games, even racing games like Forza Motorsport. Basically, these games are designed to be as realistic as possible while copying something in the real world, simulation or sports games. Yeah, pretty popular kind of games. We also have party games. Now, these are games that are designed to be played at a party. They're fun. You can have multiple players at the same time. Mario Party is a great example of this. Smash Brothers as well is kind of a party game that some people take too seriously, but there you go. We also have the kind of, I don't know how you'd say, action adventure or action horror or adventure horror games where, Legend of Zelda is a great example of this. Like, you go through the world and you beat different bosses, and you're adventuring, but it's also like an action game, and we got the horror ones as well, like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Yep, there's not much to say about those games, but they're kind of popular. What else? Platformers. Platformers is maybe an old word now, but a platformer is a kind of game. Imagine the first Mario games or the first Sonic the Hedgehog games where you jump on different platforms to go through the level. They're called platformers. Crash Bandicoot is another one, or Cuphead is kind of a recent one. Yep, that's good. Think of some other ones. Oh, earlier I held up Street Fighter 2. For you guys watching, I'll do it again. Street Fighter 2 is a fighting game. Now, fighting games are when there's two characters or more on the screen and you do attacks to each other. I love fighting games, specifically Street Fighter. So I'm a big fan of fighting games, Tekken or, there's loads, King of Fighters and what not. So fighting games is a genre. RPG games. I can't believe I forgot RPG games. RPG games, role-playing games. Now, back in like the 70s and 80s, Dungeons and Dragons was really popular, right? A game in the real world where you pretended to be a character in the game and you controlled what that character does. And this translated into video games. We have loads and loads and loads of role-playing games in video games. The most famous example is Pokemon. You pretend to be a character and you go around the world. There's so many role-playing games, and they evolved into what we call an MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role-playing game. Think World of Warcraft. Like, you make your character and you go into this world and you do, quests and whatever. You upgrade certain skills, that kind of thing. But World of Warcraft was different because you weren't just doing it on your own or in a small group. You were doing it online with thousands of other people doing the same thing at the same time. That's called an MMORPG, and World of Warcraft is an example of that. So there you go. There's some different genres of video games for you. The next topic I want to talk to you about is kind of gamer slang. Nowadays, when you're playing games online, right, you also have an option to kind of use like audio chat with other people. Maybe people on your team, you're talking strategies or you're talking to the other players that you're playing against, and it's probably a 10-year-old on the other side of the world that wants to call you a dickhead. But, whatever. But when people talk to each other, specifically in-game or about games, there's quite a lot of slang that they use, right? And I want to try and tell you the slang that I know. Now, I'm old. I ain't played much games. Some of this might be out of date, but this is what I know, and I want to pass that information on to you. You'll notice there's a lot of acronyms, which is where it's the first letter of each word. For an example, AFK. AFK means away from keyboard, and it means I'm not actually sat in front of the TV right now. I'm probably doing something else. I'm not available. I'm temporarily unavailable because I'm away from the keyboard. I am AFK. Good. Another acronym you'll hear from gamers, when you've finished playing, they'll say GG's. GG's. So G for good, G for game, GG's, good game, well played. That kind of thing. Can't think of any other acronyms off the top of my head. Maybe more will come to me in a second. Now, when I was young and you went to the shop and you bought a game like this, that was it. Finished. Everything you needed was on the physical game, and that was it. Nowadays, things have changed because the developers will actually update the game from time to time, and you just download what we call a patch. So, for example, maybe the game developers found a glitch in the game. Now, a glitch is something in the code that is wrong or broken, which causes something strange to happen in the game. Maybe somebody finds a glitch, so the developers fix it. You download a patch for the internet, and it fixes that problem in the game. So this is called an update or a patch, and they will patch the game, and you download that from the internet, right? That's one way that we do it. They also will fix things, especially in competitive games like fighting games or something. Maybe one weapon is too good or it's not good enough and they want to change it a little bit. The patch maybe will change the game. Now, if something gets better, like a character or a weapon gets better because of the patch, we say it got buffed or it received a buff. And if it got worse, it got nerfed or it received a nerf. You know, that character got nerfed, that weapon got buffed. And if they say it's broke or broken, it means it's too good. It's way better than it should be. It's broken. So, yeah, that's something you'll hear. Speaking of acronyms and speaking of downloads, we'll often get something called a DLC. DLC means downloadable content, and it's extra content that you can download for the game. Usually you have to pay for it. Now, this can be things like extra maps, or it can be extra characters, or it can just be extra costumes or skins, as we call them. And you download those from the developers, and it kind of adds new things to the game, called DLC. Now, I'm going to say a sentence, and then I'm going to break it down. Right, so the sentence is, that guy got bodied so hard, he rage quit. I bet he's salty AF. Right, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, bodied. Bodied means that you beat somebody so hard, so badly. If you get bodied, it means it was so one-sided and you lost really badly. Rage quit is to disconnect from the game because you're losing. Maybe you just turn the power off or you unplug the internet or something. You rage quit. You're angry and you quit the game. You rage quit. If you're really angry because of a game, we will say that that person is salty. Or, you know, the salt levels are very high. So if somebody's salty, they're angry about something that happened in the game. And people will often put AF on the end to mean as fuck. Salty as fuck, salty AF. There you go. That's what that means. Now, if you take a sentence like that, the guy rage quit because I bodied him so hard, I bet he's salty AF. What does that even mean? What has that got to do with gaming? I don't understand these words. I get it, but that's how people actually talk. So I think that's basically everything from vocabulary side of things. There's loads more vocabulary, but I'll be here all day if I try and explain everything. But those are some vocabulary terms that I hope help you out a little bit. And for the last part of today's podcast, I just wanted to take a bit of time to talk about my own experiences with gaming. Now, if I think back to when I was a kid living in Sheffield, probably about 8 years old, I remember, I think we got a Nintendo for Christmas or something like that. I don't really remember. But I remember as a young kid playing not before that, I was playing the regular Nintendo, the NES. And I remember we had a game which had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt was a game where you used a gun to shoot ducks on the screen, and it was like 2 games in 1 cartridge, and I remember playing that a lot. I also remember playing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for that as well, and I think I also had a Ghostbusters game, maybe, around that time. So the first games I played were, probably I played games before that, but those are the first ones I really, really remember. So retro gaming, we're talking late 80s here. The first ever Nintendo consoles, and I told you I'm an old guy. So yeah, I remember playing those games as a kid. Now, if I think about my favorite ever games, it's tricky, but I'm going to say Street Fighter. If you watch the videos a lot, you'll notice that occasionally I have Street Fighter t-shirts on. In the background of the YouTube videos is Street Fighter things, and it's probably my favorite ever game, even to the point where I still play the latest versions, like Street Fighter 5 from time to time. And when I was in England, I used to help organise competitive events for Street Fighter. So, big Street Fighter fan, absolutely love it. I wouldn't say I'm good at it, I'm alright at it, but I absolutely love it. That's probably my favourite game ever. Either that or second place is probably Pokemon, back in the day when I was young, I remember getting the games, right? When I was young, they came in 2 colours. You got the red one and the blue one, right? The red one and the blue one. And they could only catch certain Pokemon. Like, you couldn't catch all the Pokemon on one game. So you had to get both and, like, trade Pokemon across with your friends. It was kind of wild. That's the world we lived in. So I used to love Pokemon games. Nowadays, I still play Pokemon. The last game I bought was this one, which is Pokemon Scarlet on the Nintendo Switch. I'm about 30% through this game, so that's good. But these days, I like retro games. I like to buy old games, Super Nintendo, N64, that kind of stuff. And I like to play retro games, but that's just me. Everybody's different. So there you go. That's a podcast all about gaming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And today's question of the day, if you've made it this far, what is the first game you ever played and what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments, in the show notes, wherever you can. Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But thank you very much. So this podcast, requested by Kazo on Patreon. You should be like Kazo. Join me on Patreon. The link is in the description and the show notes. Patreon.com/DanSenSei. Go there now. You can join for as little as $5 a month. You get loads of stuff. You get extra podcasts. You can make requests. You can vote in polls. You get access to the Patreon Discord community where you can chat, ask questions, and even voice speak with other people. Practice your English. And we also have the Chinwag community chat once a week. We get together on Zoom and talk together in English. It's wicked. Check it out. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Thank you very much. Other than that, that's everything from today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next week in the next one. See ya!